If you needed another reason to acknowledge why the Chicago Bulls are one of the most poorly run organizations in all of sports, we got one. I have news on the update for Alex Caruso, who we know has been circled as an ideal pairing for the Sixers team, one of the perfect complementary role players to have on a contending team and really around Joel Embiid. But it does not seem like that is in the cards, as we got a recent report from the Chicago Bulls saying that the Bulls reportedly rejected a top 10 pick for Alex Caruso because the ownership wanted them to compete for the playoffs, per Will Gottlieb. Quote, according to a source with knowledge of the situation, the Bulls have received offers from multiple teams consisting of multiple protected first-round picks. One of those deals included a pick in the top 10 of the 2024 draft, the source said. The Golden State Warriors were among teams who made a strong offer for Caruso, multiple sources confirmed. The source indicated that there was a mandate from the Reindorfs to fight for the playoffs. That, no doubt, impacted the front office's decision making when it came to pulling the trigger on any Caruso deal. So this is the difficult spot that the Bulls find themselves in. Ownership is not aligned with the front office, and that is a recipe for failure. And for the Chicago Bulls specifically, they're going to be stuck in NBA purgatory for the foreseeable future. I mean, they're talking about right now wanting to run it back with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, a team that is just as mediocre as it gets. This is a permanent play-in team, and they seem content with staying there. And this is why, even with things not being great, there's such a clear direction for a team like the Sixers to get better. Now, this specific Caruso conversation, it's really unfortunate that this is a waste for both Alex Caruso and the Bulls. That for Caruso, he is tailor-made to play on a high-level contending team, and we've seen him have success at that level. The Bulls, it would be better for them to take draft picks back to have a chance to improve as an organization rather than continuing to be in this purgatory, which they seem dead set on being. But regardless, that is an issue which the Sixers are not going to be able to come over the top and fix. I know that the price point seems steep because Caruso is a guy who falls in this category of every team needs one, but there's so few of them. That he is one of those ideal glue guys, role players that do know exactly what they do and execute it at a high level. That's what Caruso is. And to dive into specifically what he brings on the floor, 10.1 points, 3.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists per game, 1.0 block, 1.1 or 1.7 steal, just 1.4 turnovers. Shot 46.8% from the field, 48.8% on three-point attempts, which is a career high for Caruso this year. Also shoots 39.7% on corner threes. 89% of his shots are assisted, and 61.6% of all his shots are threes. Just 30 years old, 6'5". Once again, that is a player that I think you plug and play him on any contending team, and he is going to give you positive minutes. Unfortunately, that's going to continue to be on the Chicago Bulls. Now, we know in this conversation for building out the Sixers roster that they got to dig deep a little. They got to find ways to get guys with value that is higher than what their contract will indicate. An example A of this being Kelly Oubre, a player who has his concerns or had his concerns coming to Philadelphia and outperformed things in a major way. To get that type of production for a guy on a veteran's minimum last year was phenomenal work by Daryl Morey, and they will be in the market of doing the exact same thing this summer. But they seem to be digging in some areas where I don't think they should have any business, and one of those being Sam Dekker here. Now, we got this report today from John Clark saying, I'm told the Sixers held a free agent workout and tryout for a former first-round pick of Daryl Morey in Houston, Sam Dekker. Now, Sam Dekker was an electric player to watch back in Wisconsin, as mentioned in the tweet, that he was drafted by Daryl Morey with the 18th overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. And to add a little bit of context here, that I did hear that Sam Dekker was not the only former NBA player there, that this was a workout for a couple guys. There was a couple other names that were mentioned as well. Jarrett Culver was one of them. Tony Bradley was in the mix. That there were a couple players being a part of this, but it did seem that there was specific interest in Sam Dekker. Specifically, how this tweet was portrayed, saying a workout and tryout for the former first-round pick, and I'm a little bit concerned and confused by that statement there. To dive into Sam Dekker's accomplishments in the NBA, we mentioned that he was the 18th overall pick in the 2015 draft. Well, he didn't last too long after that. And to dive into his NBA stats as a whole, he has not played real deal minutes since the 2018-19 season, which was last with Washington. And even the 2 years that he spent in Houston, he sure did not shine. Had his best season of his NBA career in his second season, just 22 years old, in 2016-17. Played 18.4 minutes per game that season, 6.5 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.0 assists. Shot just 32.1% from three, which is really what his calling card as a player needs to be on 2.4 attempts throughout the entirety of his NBA career, which once again has been taken overseas at this point in time. Has shot just 28.8% from three, just to straight up call a spade, that is not going to cut it. That is not NBA quality. And now that he is over the 30-year-old hill, I don't know if that's changing. Now, to dive into a little bit of his international stats and be fair to Sam Dekker as a whole, let's take a look at how he most recently played out in London for the London Lions there. In this year's Euro Cup, he averaged 12.3 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists, shot 40% from 3 on 4.3 3-point attempts, which is an intriguing number there. But just look at last season, 27.6% on 5.1 3-point attempts there. Overall, during his time overseas, he shot 36.9% on 4.4 3-point attempts. He's played in a variety of places at this point, in London, in Russia, in Spain. He has bounced around, and to unfortunately call it here, I'm just not overly optimistic that Sam Dekker at this point can be an NBA player. I get that you got to do your due diligence, look all across the globe and find, but I will be frustrated if Daryl Morey's bag of tricks is just digging into past Rockets players once again. That we've seen this with the Daniel Houses of the world, the PJ Tuckers of the world, the Patrick Beverleys of the world. That we know that Daryl Morey has his guys that he leans on, and those are the direction that he does go. Sam Dekker cannot be a player that makes that list. That even these players that I'm speaking of that did not work out in the past, guys like Dan House did not live up to their contracts. PJ Tucker, that was one of the driving reasons that they had to get off that contract. And a under-talked about portion of success of the James Harden deal was getting off that as well. But these are guys that have not panned out for the Sixers, and taking a guy who's even more of a risk or has less of a reason that you do believe he can be successful is incredibly frustrating there. So I wish Sam Dekker the best, but it certainly is not in a Sixers uniform. And I do think that this brings to the point that these Sixers are really kind of stuck at this point. That we know that there's all this attention being paid to that big fish, and the offseason is now in full swing now that the NBA Finals has concluded. That we're going to start to hear some of these buzzwords of teams negotiating with their players. Until the Sixers have an idea for who that big fish is, if it is Paul George, if it is Brandon Ingram, if it is Jimmy Butler, you have a really hard time rounding out the rest of the roster and finding these complementary pieces. And yes, in an ideal world and just in general here, you're looking for good basketball players, that there should be some guys whose skill sets and characteristics apply completely. But you're also, for those key complementary guys, the rest of the starting lineup, those role player type players, are going to look drastically different for what you're looking for, depending on who that superstar is. To give like a clear example here, and flashback in Sixers lore, to find your complementary players to Joel Embiid and find your complementary players to Ben Simmons, it was very different conversations there. And when you're doing this with an imaginary player that you don't know who's coming yet, it makes life difficult for Daryl Morey. So they're going to have to hit in the bargain bin. They're going to have to wait till late in this offseason to find these types of players. Sam Dekker, once again, I do not believe is one of them. So not a rapid start to the Sixers offseason. For now, it's still waiting. That there continues to be the rumors circulating. There's more on OG Anunoby, more on Paul George. The more available players, the better for this Sixers team. But you got to find a way to hit a home run. And if they do not land that primetime superstar, to an extent, this entire cap space plan, this entire game plan as a whole was for nothing. If the prize of the Sixers offseason, when we're talking about Sam Dekker at the end of it, there's an issue there. So Daryl Morey, I need you to get creative. I need you to think outside the box and look at players who have never signed a contract with you before. That should be the Daryl Morey goal from here on out. We know it's a relationship business. We know that he has his experience with a lot of these players, but it's time to think outside the box and attack new players there. So that, unfortunately, Alex Caruso, just not going to be one of them. Again, I will give the Sixers a little bit credit that they are in a better spot from a mindset standpoint when speaking about a franchise, that they are intent on competing, but now the job has to be done. There is a lot of work to do this offseason, and we're going to be breaking it down from start to finish right here on Sixers Digest. So share your frustrations with me in the comments that Alex Caruso will not be freed. Rage to Daryl Morey if you see it fit or if your heart desires there. Make sure you are smashing that like button to let me know you're listening. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We are in for a wild offseason ahead right here on Sixers Digest and plenty of big plans to dive into. So keep it locked and talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.